Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, he punched me over a fender bender, I destroyed his life. Followed brand identity rules when told not to by sales staff. Don't touch the emails. Well, okay then, MS lazy coworker. I won't. Have fun finding a new job. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. He punched me over a fender bender, I destroyed his life. I was working as a civilian with the US military overseas, and I lived off base in an apartment complex popular among the US military. One morning I accidentally hit another soldier's vehicle. Upon exiting the vehicle, I noticed that both our vehicles were what you could call a hoop tie. A hoop tie is an old car that is pretty beat up that has been passed around from service to service member, and they generally sell for $1,000 to $2,000. I also recognized that I was at fault for the accident. It was a very minor accident. His rear bumper was dented and slightly, but I could hear both our cars still running. I approached the driver who had already gotten out, and he was in uniform, and I apologized and said if it was alright with him I'd like to negotiate a payment that I will pay him in cash, and we don't involve the authorities. I wanted to keep this simple. I'll be honest, the accident was so minor, I honestly expected him to say nah man it's good, but even if he wanted some money I'd have paid him. I have always been of the opinion, if you have a fender bender, and can negotiate agreeable terms between both the parties, it's best to not involve insurance/police. He told me he wanted to call the police. I said we could call the police, or we could go on base together, and I could give him $300. He said that wasn't enough. So I upped my offer to $500. He proceeded to punch me in the face. It was a sucker punch. He got into his car and took off, and in the process nearly ran me over. Now I had a black box in my car which recorded everything. I went to the provost marshal office on base, the police station, and reported the accident and the assault and showed the MP the footage, which they used his license plate to track him down. I was also asked if I wanted to involve the local authorities/press criminal charges off base. Honestly, I felt like the soldier would learn his lesson if I let UMCJ, the military court basically, handle this, and I said not at this time. I was told it was an option. The end result was the soldier in question got 60 days of extra duty, reduction in rank, and forfeited a portion of his paycheck. Essentially, if he dealt with that, this would have been the end of the whole ordeal. Honestly, at this point I assumed our little ordeal was over. Well, a few days after his punishment was decided on, which was not long after the incident itself, I was in the commissary, grocery store on base, shopping when the soldier who assaulted saw me and began to insult me. I told him he needed to clam down, that he should learn his lesson. He told me I was a PUI who didn't know how to take a punch. I reminded him that I held back on destroying his life. He told me he's already been punished, and I can't touch him again. He left me be. A store employee witnessed the entire encounter, and I got the employee detail, and reported this interaction to his command. His commander told me he had been ordered to not interact with me, and would take action. His commander also recommended me I involve the local authorities, since this soldier obviously isn't learning his lesson. So I did. I contacted an attorney. The attorney was unsure if we could successfully sue the soldier, and said he would need a cash payment to take the case. Honestly, I was mad, and I wanted to teach this guy a lesson. I agreed, it was not cheap. To keep this story short, we ended up in a court off base. We presented our evidence. The soldier in question had decided to represent himself. Several times in the court he had outbursts. The judge ended up granting me a judgment of approximate $50,000 USD. When the judgment was given, the soldier called the judge a son of bitch, and that the army would cover for him. So the judge changed his judgment to $80,000, and the judge then asked me if I also wanted to press charges against this soldier in criminal court. Honestly, it was obvious this guy wasn't going to learn a lesson. I told the judge I wanted to pursue criminal charges in addition to the judgment. My lawyer later advised me that if I ever wanted to see the money, I should pursue an international hold. With my judgment, it's likely that a judge would grant me an international hold. An international hold is basically where this soldier would not be allowed to leave the country until I was paid my $80,000. Also, he told me that according to the agreement between the US military and the host country, the US military would honor the international hold. Basically, the US military would not protect him or move him out of country to avoid punishment. Honestly, by this point I had paid my lawyer thousands of dollars, and I honestly didn't feel like paying thousands of dollars and getting nothing for it. So I said yes, I want to go forward with the international hold. About a month later the international hold was granted, and the US military was informed of this. 2 months after that the criminal case was over and the soldier was sentenced to 90 days in jail. By this point the soldier had been moved onto the base into his barracks by his commander. I remember the day I was informed the MPs handed him over to the local authorities to begin his 90-day jail sentence. Did I mention he still owed me $80,000? I heard nothing for a year, and then one day I get a call from his commander. His commander wants me to make a statement in regards to the case. I go in and make the statement. During the statement I find out the US military was in the process of chaptering the soldier out of the US military. The commander also informed me that he was close to coming up with the money to pay me so he could have the international hold lifted. The commander also asked me if my lawyer would be willing to make a statement. I contacted my lawyer, who also made a statement about the facts of the case. A few weeks later his ex-wife contacted me. When this all started I knew he was married. Guess his wife decided to divorce him. She informed that his ex-husband had the money and needed the details on how to pay me. I provided her the details, and a few days later I got the payment and contacted his ex-wife to inform her I had been paid. She then asked me to send a receipt so he could have the international hold lifted and return to the States. I asked her how he got the money. She said he maxed out his credit, and also had family help out. Also during this conversation, I had found out the army had chaptered him out of the military. I sent her the receipt, and that was the last I ever heard from his side. Followed brand identity rules when told not to buy sales staff. I spent about 20 years in the sign and advertising industry, primarily in design and production, so I am very familiar with rules regarding brand identity and logos. I had been at the same company for about 15 years, worked my way up from being an outdoor installer to being the primary structural and visual designer for the company. We were a small company, 35 or so employees. The sales staff was never more than 2 or 3 dedicated salespeople. Usually one for petroleum accounts, and the other 1 or 2 handled commercial accounts and private customers and one-off sales. Around 2010 or so, they promoted one of our sales guys to a managerial position, so they had to hire a new salesperson. I will call him Dingus. He was an older guy, initially pleasant enough, but he quickly began to grate on the rest of the shop due to his unwillingness to learn the ins and outs of our products, and not getting thorough surveys, which always caused problems when the job sold and went to production. This became enough of a problem that we started following up on his surveys on our own to make sure they were correct. One day Dingus came to me with a proposal for some signage for an industrial campus for a fairly large agricultural corporation. Nothing gigantic, mostly a bunch of non-illuminated wayfinder signage with logos and colors to match the brand. But there were a lot of them, and they were easy to build, so it would be a pretty profitable job in the end. I put together a package and emailed everything over to Dingus. He sent back an email to me, saying that I needed to change the colors on the logos and iconography to 2 completely different schemes not included in the brand guidelines. He said that the person he was working with at the company had requested those colors. I replied that they needed to consult with their corporate marketing department to authorize the change, per their brand identity. I made it a point to tell him that if we produced these signs with altered brand identity, we were opening our shop to the possibility of reworking every sign at minimum, and possibly stepping on some toes legally. He told me to disregard their forms and do it anyway, and that I had better have a revised package ready for him on Monday to send to the customer. This guy wasn't my boss, and his rudeness pissed me off and initiated the malicious compliance. I put together the new package, using the colors he requested. I made sure to call out the PMS colors on all layouts, with notations in the descriptions, so there would be no doubt that this was a deliberate change. I then emailed a very nicely worded email to the sales guy and CC'd a copy to the customer's marketing for approval, as is standard for our shop and their brand. I made sure to ask them to contact us with any corrections that needed to be made and provided the appropriate phone numbers for Dingus and myself on the email. Monday rolls around and I get called into the office. Dingus and the owner/CEO begin grilling me about going over Dingus' head to the customer, and how my email had caused an issue between corporate and the local manager who had requested the changes. I told my boss that I had been specifically told to disregard the customer's brand identity, and I had made the changes as requested. I then pointed out the instructions from corporate marketing that said all advertising must be sent to them for approval. As I was the primary designer, I was authorized to do this since any feedback from marketing would come to me for revisions anyway. I pointed out that I was never told not to send the specs for approval, and that it was part of my job to make sure that my designs would meet with customer specs. Since the on-site manager said it was okay, and I had emails telling me this was the case, I had no reason to think that there would be an issue. I knew damn well this wasn't the case, but I played dumb. As it turned out, the on-site manager just didn't like the corporate color scheme and wanted to do his own thing since he was the king of his little fiefdom. Dingus just wanted the sale and was willing to break copyright rules to get it. My email exposed they were trying to end run around corporate just to get the sale done. The owner/CEO called corporate and confirmed I had followed their rules to the letter, and that changes to their brand identity were not allowed without explicit approval from them. I was told I had done nothing wrong, and Dingus got an extensive lecture and barely avoided being fired, but was gone a few months later. We still got the job once I corrected all the colors back. Don't touch the emails. Well, okay then, MS lazy coworker. I won't. Have fun finding a new job. So at my job, I'm one of the supervisors. It's a firm with a lot of employees all tucked into one big room, and there are 2 supervisors and a shift leader in each shift, morning, afternoon, night. These shifts get rotated on occasion, but we supervisors mostly rotate with them. Normally, with my typical co-supervisor, we share the responsibility of dealing with all the work-related emails. There's a lot more than one would expect, so it does sometimes take up to even a few hours of each day. One week, one of the shift leaders derped and put me together with a different supervisor, and we were basically stuck for that month. Now, she's absolutely lazy. Like, ridiculously so. Won't even get off her ass during lunch and go eat at the cafeteria. Instead, she makes mess at her work desk, which would later be used by the supervisor of the next shift. I used to be the schmuck getting the desk from her, and it was always a crummy mess. Because of this, she does none of the actual supervising and never has. During our 3rd day that week, she asked me why I was sitting at the desk for so long, and if I had any intention of actually doing my job. I replied that I was doing the emails, and she just got super pissed, telling me that was her assigned duty. This is how she and her usual supervisor split their load, and told me to get out of the office and go watch the workers. She pretty much screamed it, turning red in the face and all, throwing all sorts of insults at me about how my generation never does shit, so I told her, fine, I'm never touching the emails again. We even signed unofficial workplace contracts distributing our duties evenly, and she got the emails. Now, though we are technically all the same, I am the supervisor most likely to be promoted, so the shift leaders and the director generally talk to me, and have me relay some info to the others, so I'm a lot closer to all of them than the other supes are. Well, because of this, I was the first to learn that we'd need to master Excel and hop to it immediately. It wasn't yet officially announced, but when it was, the lazy bum I was stuck with first refused to learn it, saying it wasn't a skill listed as needed while we applied. Knowledge about Microsoft programs was listed. She kept postponing learning it until we officially got some work to do with Excel. I started doing it right away, and because this isn't something you can just do for another person, each individual soup gets credit based on how many tablets needed we make. They're for some sort of pamphlet, but I have no clue how to describe the full thing in English. So, during our 3rd week together, I do the usual routine of checking on the workers, then working with Excel, until I met my quota. Well, because MS Lazy Bum never used Excel, she got an official warning for not meeting the quota, and ended up only barely learning some stuff about Excel. She was still super slow, and couldn't even meet the quota, let alone make up for the lost time. Now, during this, the emails, as you may have guessed, remained untouched, because Excel took her the full 8 hours. During our last week together, the director came and asked us what was going on and why was our shift always getting clogged with the emails. Ms. Lazy Bum immediately tried to pin the blame on me, but bippity bop pity boo, I had the contract she insisted on us signing. Since she'd already been given a warning for not learning Excel, and had a previous complaint about the way she spoke to some of the other employees, she was fired. I was meant to return to my usual co-supervisor next week, but now I'm on sick leave, so that might be karma bitch-slapping me. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.